Welcome back to the Tech and Tekkers podcast, where we talk all things football, tech, Web3, and NFTs. Brought to you by NFTFC. NFTFC is developing a platform to support athletes early in their careers without having to take percentages of their future earnings. Our platform incentivizes fans and supporters to support athletes early in their careers by giving them benefits and direct access to the player's journey. If you want to check out more about the project or get involved, you can find us at nftfc.club. Or if you want to get involved in the community, you can join our Discord to continue the conversation. All of our links will be in the show notes. This week, we sit down with Jim and Neil from XG Studios. XG rewards athletes real-world sports participation with personalised digital collectibles and the XG utility token. As an athlete myself, this project is one that I'm really excited by and one I can't wait for you to hear all about. Enjoy. All right, hey everyone, welcome back to the Tech and Tekkers podcast, episode 3. This one's going to be a fun one. I've had the pleasure of speaking to these guys a few times, and it's always good fun. We've got Jim and Neil from XG Studios. Guys, how are you?
Good, thanks, Finley. How are you?
Yeah,
I'm pretty
good. You again.
I'm doing all right. One question we always ask everyone, it's always the first question, is how did your Web3 journey start? I know you guys were big into social media originally, so what was that transition like?
Neil, I'll let you take that. I'll do your NBA Top Shot story on that one.
Yeah, fine. Yeah, well, look, for me, when I was at an agency, we got pitched a few things that were sort of blockchain Web3 related, and I've got to be honest, it didn't click the first time around. In fact, it made me feel a little bit stupid that I didn't get it to begin with. So I did a little bit of research about it, and then saw something. I think it was in like Sports Pro or something like that, to sign up to this new project that the NBA had done a deal with, and it was Top Shot. So got in reasonably early on Top Shot. I think it was like into the closed beta, and that was right at the start of lockdown, I think, in the UK. So, there was me just sort of experimenting, spending, like $50, $20 here and there, thinking I was going to get told off by my partner for spending this money illicitly at night on like these video clips. But yeah, through that experience, it all started to sort of make a little bit of sense. I'm glad it did, obviously, because I was thinking, to be honest, if it doesn't make sense now, it never will. And obviously, Top Shop just went through that kind of massive period of growth, and understanding how the kind of community galvanized around that product was really, really interesting to be a part of, and actually just seeing how the Dapper team kind of grew it and managed all of those various stages of growth was really quite something. They did something that really hasn't been done before, and there were quite a few sort of bumps along the way with, queues being botted and KYC and growth and whatnot. But, they've done an incredible job. So kind of having a bit of a ringside seat to kind of watch that process has been incredible, really, to be honest.
I was going to say, no, in parallel, what I did was I joined very much a Web 2 company and sort of like a Snapchat, TikTok type company, working for them, doing sports for them. And if only I hadn't done that and got into Web 3 at the time, I'd now be a whale. Sadly, I've missed that opportunity, which is a bit frustrating. But there we go.
You weren't standing there doing all the TikToks, were you, Jim?
A little bit like that. It was getting a bit awkward, but actually, it's kind of, to your point. I think the question about how Web 2 and Web 3, we worked a lot in Web 2, doing social media for people like World Rugby and Manchester City and lots of other teams. And it was just interesting to see how, once you saw NBA Top Shot and you were like, this is a game changer. It was a bit of an epiphany. You're going, wow. And to be fair to Dapper, and they did it really well. It's kind of, it just shows how just ownership, that whole kind of, especially in sports, kind of owning moments and so on, was just really well done, and it just literally changed the game. I think certainly for me.
What about you?
Yeah,
Finley?
What about me? What about my journey?
Yeah.
Mine started off very much just from a creator's perspective. So I've always been into graphic design and illustration. And after my professional football days, I say professional football days, it was one very short year. But I came back to Australia, and as a kid that's been kind of playing football his whole life, the only thing I was interested other than football was like graphic design, illustration, and all that sort of stuff. So I think that naturally kind of led into Web3, just from a pure creator's perspective. And I think the thing that kind of hit me straight away was it's so much more than just creators being able to release digital artwork. The very first project I got into was actually Atom Bomb Squad, and the thing that hit me instantly was just how helpful and passionate the community were. I was very lucky that a lot of the people that were in the Discord when I first jumped in were extremely helpful. So it showed me all of the positives of Web3, and from that moment, I kind of knew instantly that I wanted to kind of grow my own project, and saw a lot of overlaps between the two communities of Web3 and football.
I think it's really interesting that you say that, right? Because I think working in sort of content and communities and in sport for quite some time, people use the word community and have done for quite some time. But Web3 communities are definitely different. There is, a kind of much more personal, one-to-one kind of set of relationships that are built. Really, that's unlike anything that you'd get on Facebook or Twitter or even YouTube. Which is still you know kind of a form of broadcasting, or a lot of publishers still do use them as a form of broadcasting, and it's great if people get lots of engagement. But you know, very you know, very few people really use it to talk to people. And actually, Web3 is dialogue, right? There's just so much more dialogue.
Yeah, I think Web3 is just perfectly suited, especially for football communities. Like when I look at the comparisons between the two, I more mean like how passionate they both are. Like football fans are notoriously completely dedicated to their one team, and they live and breathe that team. So for me, Web3 kind of gets exciting is what do projects look like when they start to give back like benefits and access to their communities. And I think just over the last 20 years, especially with the way football's kind of become more about the money and the owners, I think it's about time that these projects started to come out that actually aim to benefit the fans and the people.
Well, do you know what, Finley, we'd agree entirely. And I think, kind of when you work with those big rights holders, you really do go into meetings and they talk about fan monetization. And it's kind of, and, we do understand that what's the finances of big teams, and they're expensive. And, I can understand with lockdown and no ticket sales and all these things. But I think that the vision with XG we really wanted to come to was to say, just to go beyond that and not think of it as just like something to monetize, but actually about how Web3 enables ownership. And I don't think it's really been explained to people in the football community about how Web3 changes the game from just posting on Mark Zuckerberg's channels to actually owning things and having pieces of content that you own and belong to you.
Yeah, I agree. And that's a great segue actually into XG. When you guys first told me about XG, as a football player myself, it's something that just sunk in straight away, and I think it's got real legs. So either Jim or Neil, if you want to give an explanation of what XG is, that'd be great.
Go on, Jim.
Yeah, well, yeah. So, well, XG is basically it's a sort of slight, it's a mindset shift with NFTs, but it gives you NFTs and tokens based on your real world footballing performance. So when people go out on Hackney Marshes or wherever they go out and play football for any sort of league that we can at least ascertain that you are in a league, we will give you tokens and NFTs based on that real world performance. So it's all about. I mean, we have called it play to earn in real life, but that's the idea, is that you're getting tokens for your actual, physical performance. And deep down, really, it is about trying to get people to play more. And I think, I go into my sort of the story I always say was, we my son was playing football a lot, really passionate about it. And at the end of the season, he kind of, he literally got a little old plastic medal that he held up and was like, very excited, ran around, put it on to social channels. But we were just like, actually, do you know what? It's not really fit for purpose. I mean, it's great, a medal and everything. We wouldn't, we won't take them away. But it made us think that this is a kid who's He's mining his own cryptocurrency. He's got his own YouTube channel. He spends 3 hours a day in a metaverse in Minecraft, and we're giving him a little plastic medal for it. And that's where the kind of the two sort of parts of the puzzle came together. We were saying actually that's what you can give people that they can own and earn for their own activity on a football pitch, and we can start to give them some really interesting digital rewards for that activity.
Yeah, I remember when you first told me that, Jim, and it's something that I kind of just had a smile with, because when we're on that call, I brought a prop. I'm gonna mute myself because it might be a bit loud for the listeners, but
There we go.
Yeah.
Loving it.
so
Yeah.
for the
Let me
listeners,
guess. Hold on, actually, I'm going to guess that's on the back of the bedroom door, is it?
Well, it's on
yeah,
the
so
coat
you can
hanger by the
see
looks
it's
of it, in
it's
the
on a
wardrobe.
coat hanger. So when you were
Oh,
saying, Jim, that your son came home and he literally just put all of his medals at the back of the closet, mine were literally on a coat hanger in the back of the closet. I haven't pulled them out for a few
for a
years, but when you first and for me, that's why that's why I love the idea of XG. Like as a football player myself, having all those medals just stuck at the back of a closet, I think it's a really good idea. And I mean, like you said, Jim, like all these kids nowadays, they're spending all of their time on Minecraft, on Fortnite, on Facebook, on Instagram. Everything is digital. So the idea of actually having medals, MVPs, whatever you guys are going to give the awards for, I think is a really good one.
Neil, you may want to just introduce our most recent football advisor.
Yeah, I mean that's part of it. I think that has interested Nadim Manua, who's just come on board as an advisor to us. And I think there's kind of like two parallel tracks of our development when I sort of think about the roadmap and what's being built. You've got that kind of relationship with the game and those incentives that are tied to your physical activity that generate the rewards. And that's one area within itself which has got, so much potential to develop it and construct the rewards that actually are meaningful. For example, we're starting with kind of fairly basic kind of ambitions. So things like running a 10K or wins and goals. But actually, if you dig a little bit deeper, there are ways in which you can construct rewards that actually relate to specific in-game achievements. And once you have the data of what's going in a game, we can effectively build on top of that and incentivize people and reward people for specific things that are achieved in the game, whether that's clean sheets and things like that. So, I think, having a professional footballer who's played the game and wants to make it sort of not only relevant to their experience but relevant to the type of people like Jim's son that he was talking about, then that's
Mm.
really valuable to see how we can tie that together. And then secondly, off the back of that, we've also got these assets that people are collecting, and then it's a case of, okay, how do we create that digital experience and develop that in a really interesting way? How do we reward milestones? How do we incentivize people to collect in particular ways that take them on a collecting journey? It's effectively got a gamified element to it, where you're looking at somebody's sort of multi-year journey effectively, and how they can start to shape how those assets reflect to take a piece of their personality, their achievements, and take that with them into their digital identity. So we think that kind of unlocks, again, some really, really interesting possibilities that we're working quite hard on developing at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's a really brilliant idea. I remember when Jim was first telling me about it, I think like just from the perspective that XG is one of the first kind of projects I've seen that are incentivizing real world performance with digital NFTs. And I think, I mean, when I was growing up, it was a constant battle with my dad. My dad's a football coach as well. And he was always pestering me to go out and kick the ball when I grew up in like a social media age where everything was online. You'd rather be inside playing the PlayStation rather than going outside and kicking the ball. So I think actually tying the two together it is really great, and I think it's going to be one of the first use cases for football, especially. But yeah, I think it's a really great idea. How does a player or a team actually go about using XG? Like, how do they actually get involved with the project?
Neil, do you want to start that one?
Yeah, so I mean, to begin with, we're looking at launching with grassroots leagues and teams. So we would onboard a league at a time, and so there's kind of two layers to it, really. The fundamental uh, issue that we need to sort of solve technically as well as part of that experience is to kind of have a source of truth. So we'll only be working with leagues where there is some kind of readily available source of truth. So online league and whatnot. Now that's kind of pretty much widespread in the football pyramid. These kind of things go right down into the kind of lower echelons of football, certainly in the UK. So integrating that source of truth into our product means that there will be profiles both for teams and for the players. So we'll be working with the admins at the team level who can onboard all of their teams, all their players, give them a profile and set them up so that when the results come in and people have scored a goal and so on, those rewards can be generated and allocated to that particular profile. So I mean that's the kind of sort of basic overview of the kind of technical integration that needs to take place. But as well as that, as we're kind of developing like a validation model as well, where the players themselves contribute a match report to the XG protocol, and can get incentivized as well to contribute some of the match data themselves, which will be validated almost like as a multi-sig wallet. That's the kind of objective that we've got in building the product, and earn basically from contributing to the protocol.
No, sorry. I think I was actually going to talk about language, Finley, which was like it's interesting when Neil says. I think when you get into the crypto space, you say things like a multi-sig wallet quite happily, like people sort of know what it is. And I think that what we've actually just done a piece of research with Pitchero with 525 grassroots footballers. So Pitchero are kind of their team a team admin software. And it was just interesting to ask people what they thought about crypto and Web3 and all these kind of things. And the basic output was that 70% of people had a real case of FUD, and I don't really like that. And crypto, it's all a bit funny, and I don't like it. And they were and I think because they didn't really understand it, they decided to sort of not like it. And then those people who did like crypto or knew about it, or knew what an NFT was, loved the idea of XG. But we just made us realize that once you kind of get the idea that it's something's ownership and you get something, it's your reward and you can keep it, people are like, this is great, I like it. But when we say things like a multi-sig wallet or those kind of things, people just a bit like I don't, or even the word NFT is a bit weird for most footballers. I don't really know what that is. So I think we need to kind of create a language around it. And we always look to the NBA Top Shots where they don't even use the word NFT, they just call them moments. We go, get it, I've
Yeah.
got that moment, got it, absolutely. So we're just trying to work out that language about how you validate. Even validate sounds a bit sort of strong, doesn't it? But how people
Yeah.
sort of say, just check with the other team about what their score was, whether they agree with you, and then then we have a third party say this, that's absolutely right. Then it's kind of nice and simple for people to understand. So I think that one of the things that we've got at the moment is the whole onboarding of footballers process will be quite interesting. And that's the first thing. We'll be doing some tests this summer, some prototype leagues, and it would just be really interesting to see how normal people, normal footballers, kind of start to warm towards XG and the kind of the Web3 benefits.
But you touched on
Yeah.
something earlier. It'd be interesting to get your take on it, actually, Finley. It's just like this sort of popular narrative that's developing around football's relationship with crypto. Because I think there are so many stories, every day, and we're seeing them on all of our kind of social media about these big sponsorship deals and hundreds of millions of dollars and so on. I think it's very difficult to kind of have a conversation in amongst a lot of that noise. It's quite interesting, particularly when you've got projects that are doing something a little bit different, like yours, like NFTFC. People might find it difficult to even understand how our projects are almost crypto projects because they maybe seem slightly different to what people are seeing on social media, which is fairly kind of sensational in the way that it's being managed.
Yeah, I think, and it's why I kind of resonated with everything XG is doing. It's like our projects are coming from a place of like we're trying to solve a real world problem. Whereas I think a lot of these other projects, and just media being media, you tend to always get, or not always, but majority of the time, you tend to get the negative projects, which tend to cloud people's judgment of the space. But I think with a lot of these companies and also influencers that are coming into the space, they're coming into the space with the pure intention of making financial gains. Now, whether they put that across or not, I think it's really easy to kind of tell whether a project or a founder is actually in it for the short-term financial gain. Unfortunately, for some people, it's not so obvious, and they kind of find out after they buy into the NFTs. But I think there's almost a lot of work that needs to be done, because right now there's too many projects that are having their primary focus is on that short-term gain, and to an extent, like I can understand why football fans might be cautious to get into the NFT space. Like I would almost advise my parents to not get into the NFT space just because they're an older generation and might not necessarily understand all the scams that go on. But I mean, I made a Twitter post this morning. I don't know if you guys saw it, and it was a thread about why I think football is perfectly suited towards Web3. And when I think about all the scams that happen, it kind of like reflects on the fact that the owners aren't doxxed. And what's really stood out to me through all the conversations I've been having with all these football projects is all these football projects are fully doxxed, and the founders have no problem showing their faces. Like we're real people that have lived and breathed football for years, and we're actually trying to solve real issues. So I think like that's probably the big reason I think that football fans should try and learn some more about the NFT space and actually realize that there's real world access and benefits for them before just looking towards the media articles that are saying, oh, this is a scam and all the rug pulls that go on.
Yeah, it's going to be a bit of a journey, isn't it? And I think the words are so loaded at the moment, and that actually just owning digital stuff until that just becomes commonplace and part of the things that you own. You know, some of which you value, some of which is junk. You know, and some things that you collect because they've got emotional value or financial value. I mean, there's the full spread, just like real world assets, right? So until
Mm.
that kind of understanding creeps in through, you know, big projects like Top Shot and others, then I think there's still probably going to be some challenges with sentiment. But you know, be interesting to see how that journey unfolds and how long it takes, because there's certainly a lot of progress. You know, as we go on, I think more and more people are understanding all the time, you know, how it fits in with their world, with their perspective, with their life, with their digital experience and real world experience.
Yeah, I think what's important as well is to just, for anybody that's thinking about getting in the space, or even anybody that's in the space now, is just doing your research on the project and the founders. And for me anyway, that's like the biggest thing that can help you avoid scams. And I think it's almost the people that don't do their research on the founders or the project that tend to get scammed, unfortunately. A question I had is like, how are you guys going about onboarding, and like how have you found that journey? I know obviously NFTFC, we found it difficult trying to convince football fans of the NFT space, but I'd love to know your experiences on that and what you're kind of planning on doing to onboard people onto XG.
Yeah, so far we've been quite actually strangely not really talking to football fans, particularly while we organise everything and get our kind of prototype sorted out. So we're, it's an interesting sort of time for us because we're actually going through a kind of investment round, which is an interesting time. We're getting a lot of interest from investors, but we have to use, it's about selling a token, and so instantly to the conversation about what is this project? How does it work? When you speak to football fans about it, they're a bit like haven't quite understood. So the basic principle is what we'll do is once we go through, get the prototype running this summer, and then once we've got something we can show people, it'll be much clearer about how it works and how we can onboard them, and that's when the journey really starts. So I think the
Mm.
kind of the plan at the moment is to kind of get the prototypes working, and then people will be quite clear about how that works.
Yeah, and I think we probably gonna test with quite small cohorts of people as well, so that we can, just speak to them as humans and make them understand what we're trying to achieve. I think as we scale, which we'll hopefully get to that phase at some point soon, humanizing that experience and building a community, a real community around grassroots football and the kind of journeys that players are on is going to be really important. So having some kind of community management voices and faces on screen, making it an interesting, engaging experience that's got that kind of like learning journey sort of just hardwired into it. We know that there's a large proportion of the audience who at the moment don't really get NFTs or crypto. However, they might be interested in getting involved in a community that celebrates their achievements if they keep winning or keep scoring goals. So I think that's a kind of that's a really fun part of it, to be honest, for us, which kind of draws very much from the background we've got of kind of building communities around content and making sure the
Mm.
content has a purpose, really, as opposed to the project.
Sorry, Phil, I was going to say, if you speak to the investment community, they kind of, you go, but where's your community? And you go, well, there will be a community around XG and discussing the next drop and what's going on and so on. But actually, weirdly, each team is its own community. So, kind
Yeah.
of within it, you're almost speaking to ready-made communities. We're kind of offering them something that they can use and enjoy. And, there's a whole kind of, well, we originally set out a few months ago, we were talking about the idea of a team as a DAO almost, how do you reward
Mm.
each other within a team, and how do you applaud behaviour? When we're among friends here, Finley, we can talk about the left back problem, which is in football you often don't get much reward if you're a left back. You don't score very often. If your goalie's bad, you don't get many clean sheets. So we're just trying to find ways to incentivise teams within that and to get teams to be like mini communities. But the idea that, kind of when you speak to investors, where are you going to get your community from? You're like, it's football. It's
Yeah.
built on community. That's kind of what we do. So it's a sort of slightly different space than where crypto projects are at, I think.
Yeah, I mean that's a really good point. Like the communities are already there, and I think it gets really interesting, and it's something we're going to look to do with NFTFC as well. Is a lot of these people are on the outside just observing, but what does it actually look like if they're kind of forced into the space? And if you're given an NFT, you're going to want to learn more about the actual space and what that NFT kind of entitles you and what it means. So I think that's really interesting, and it's almost like if one person in the team was interested, it kind of forces all the other people in the team into the space as well. So I think the communities are there in football especially. So I really like what you guys are doing with almost like rewarding people's real world benefits by giving them an NFT. um, what does life look like beyond players getting NFTs for their real world performance? Are there any future plans for XG? How do you plan on evolving the project?
Yeah, so I mean that's one of the many fun parts of this, I guess, in a way, is developing that digital experience around those assets. So that's the place where I think we can really look to explore and have some fun, build out some collaborations. Because obviously, one of the big topics in Web3 is interoperability and the ability for you to take your assets wherever you'd like to go into these new metaverse worlds and communities that are being created. So, we would hope that, an XG collection of some sort, we can create some of those benefits. We can forge collaborations with, a whole host of partners, whether these are real world brands that have got some kind of space in metaverse worlds or gaming worlds. It creates quite a lot of opportunities for us to build out and explore in really interesting ways. So no, that's definitely going to be a fun part of it. But to begin with, obviously, we've got to make those kind of those foundation stones, those kind of first core collecting NFTs, really clear and really interesting, and relate to those very personal milestones that people are building, on their sporting journey. So, potentially it's quite an interesting long road, but trying to stay focused on the first steps at the moment, because it's just, what it's like. There's just so much to do when you're just starting out like us.
Yeah, and I think like what the project looks like now, and when you actually end up releasing the NFTs and giving them away for people's participation, but in 6 months' time, like the space is going to look completely different. And I think that's for me as a founder anyway. What's most exciting is that I mean, even in a month or two, what we can do as a project is going to be like drastically different to what we can actually achieve now. And I think that's just the
Mhm.
pace at which the space is evolving. Um, One kind of
Definitely,
interesting point
definitely.
about XG, yeah, the most interesting part I found about XG is like with actually giving away NFTs for people's participation. I think like the artwork itself needs to be appealing, and it's like Jim, you mentioned it on the first call we had. Like that's for all these young people actually getting into the space. It almost doesn't really mean anything if the artwork they're getting for their participation isn't up to standard. And it's really good to see XG kind of putting an emphasis on that. Do you guys want to talk more about kind of who you brought on board for that?
Yeah, yeah, love to. So we're going to be working with a creative studio called Future Romance, which has been founded by a chap called Hugo Boesch, who's got a background in making, NFTs, crypto art, and I suppose like his most sort of famous project is the Adidas Into the Metaverse drop, which was the big collaboration with those guys, Bored Ape Yacht Club and Punk's Comics. So he was involved in the creation of some of the CGI animations behind that, the NFTs themselves, and that was I think a collab with an agency called RNA. But amazing work. Obviously, it was really, really high impact, and I think the bit that resonates with us about the whole that whole release was, I suppose, like the mechanics of that. How it's something that isn't just a static NFT drop. There is a very, very clear evolution to those assets, which are really, really well thought through as to how the assets evolve. With each merch drop, there's different phases to the project. So I think we're starting to see with those guys and with people like Artifact Studios as well, who've created these assets which are clearly sort of brimming with some kind of future life and potential. Um, that's very much kind of where we can see things going, is that there's a very sort of big, long form journey that will play out with the assets that you collect. And, so definitely not a sort of Microsoft clip art approach to what things what things look like. They've really got to be just absolutely brimming with potential, really, and just fun as well, right? So, hopefully we're taking people into a slightly different world that operates in parallel to their football life. So, it's going to be a really fun journey working with Hugo on that side of it.
I'll take it. I love those guys. Finley, I was going to say I love working with those guys because they're thinking 2 or 3 years in advance. I'm kind of like,
Yeah.
I'm like, well, can we just get the NFT out? And they're like, don't do that. Think about this, about how this is going to evolve and how players are going to do that over the next 2 to 3 years. And I think that's the kind of genuinely the interesting part. We've got to get footballers to go on a journey with us, and it won't be kind of just drop and drop. And you might, if you play for I was going to say, so play for my son's team, he'll be like 8 losses in a row. So we've got to manage those kind of things as well as, those people doing 10 wins in a row. And how does that all work? And it's quite a complex kind of uh, canvas, but it's the fun part as well.
I think, yeah. Do you know what you just mentioned a bit that we haven't talked about actually yet as well, is that this sounds like it could be something that's only of interest to you if you're just like clocking up W's and scoring hat tricks every week. And as I know, that that isn't always the case. Um, so I think there's a really interesting opportunity for us to reward members of our community, on a regular basis by some of their activity. People who are repeatedly on the wrong end of a hiding. We will have an opportunity to celebrate them.
Just to be clear, was
And
that you, Finley? Or was that actually?
You
no,
have like a
it
little
really is.
theme setting.
Exactly. I mean, this is it. We want to surprise people as well, so that the kind of reward experience isn't just so formulaic that it's just like I'm only involved in this if I'm clocking up wins. It really should
Yeah.
surprise people, and that can be NFTs, but also real life experiences as well. It could be
Yeah.
defensive coaching sessions, for example. Who knows? But it's a really fun part of it.
Yeah, you can just have like an MP4 of Jim laughing at you if you get spanked like 10-0.
On loop.
Yeah. No, I think you touched on something really important there as well, and it's it goes beyond actually getting the NFT. Like, for example, if you win a game, just getting an NFT to say that you've won a game. And I think the idea of, like, if somebody lost by a considerable margin and actually giving them training sessions, it's actually the benefits that you can give that are attached to the NFT as well. It's not just a little digital collectible that you can flex. Like, you can actually attach like real world value to these NFTs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no, completely. And that's going to be the one of the interesting parts of building that side of the project.
No, I was going to say, and I think also one of the things that we also haven't quite worked out is just how many moons ago, Finley, we start talking about kind of, back to your collection of medals, that sort of digital trophy cabinet. I think one of the interesting things is, you have still got those medals, to be fair. You kind of, they have meant enough to you that you really did keep them. And I think that's the bit that we also need to understand is how personal these things can be. And if you do beat your your league rivals by, 5 goals that one time, you are going to want to keep something. And even if it's just the metadata that says, you won, it was 5-0 and that sort of thing. People will want to keep that, and how that whole sort of personal collecting experience pans out will be quite an interesting one over time as well.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to what we were saying before. Like, they can almost take on a life of their own. Like, they don't necessarily, I think with the space advancing so quickly, there's going to be so much room to actually do something with those NFTs and trophies in the future. Like, they're not, I think the thing with these physical medals is they just literally sit there and do nothing and collect dust. And that's kind of why there's a need for XG. And I think not only the benefits, but I mean, what you could actually do with those NFTs, like, you could almost evolve them and reward people for having a certain amount of wins or winning the season. I think it can really evolve over time. It doesn't necessarily just have to sit there as I've won this game and that's it. I just look at it once and never see it again.
Finley, if you weren't doing NFTFC, we'd have you come and work for us. You're thinking of it in exactly the right way, and I think it's just been an exciting journey.
Yeah, I definitely share that excitement for you guys. And I think just the emphasis you guys are actually putting on the community itself and going to the source and to the community and getting their insights as to what they think it would look like, I think is a really good move. What do you think other kind of projects should be focusing on when coming into the NFT space? I think you guys have got it really well, so I'm really interested into what you think projects should be doing, or where some projects are necessarily going wrong.
Well, I think I was going to speak for you. I mean, I think there are some projects that we've been following, like Punk's comics, and well, Neil's a big Punk's comic guy, and those kind of comics where you actually really have got a kind of, you can see an evolution whereby they've started small with a kind of comic, but it's going to go into basically, without being silly, they want to be a kind of Marvel comics competitor, and you go, right, we're going to start small, but we're going to get to this sort of place. And I think it's those ones where you're going on that journey with them. Whereas actually, you kind of, without being silly, I saw, Liverpool did a launch of sort of characters the other day, and it just didn't seem like it was going to go anywhere. You're like, okay, I've got this picture, but that's kind of where it ends, and you're like, wow. So I think kind of that having it's, you're invested in an NFT for an emotional reason, and taking you on a journey. You've joined part of a club, and I guess to be honest, that's why Bored Apes and all that stuff has worked so well. Yes, it is a picture of a monkey, but what you've actually done is joined a club that's quite interesting and innovative, and that's where I think that the projects really come out, is when you've got a journey that you're taking people on.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and it's something I actually speak with Jack from Overtime a lot about, and he talks about the actual experience that the NFT holders go through. So not only like having the community at the core of everything you do, but I think the experience of them actually being involved in the project, and it not just being, I'm going to buy this NFT sit there and look at the floor price and hope it goes up. And I think that's where communities get built on, is the actual experiences and benefits you can provide them through that NFT.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, and I think there is a certain element of the kind of NFT space at the moment where your experience is actually just firmly tied. You're strapped into the kind of financial roller coaster and potential, which, let's be honest, sort of makes things, slightly more exciting. That's a really interesting component, and we'll see how long that kind of remains part of NFTs or just a part of the NFT scene. But I think what we're trying to do with XG a wee bit is kind of look slightly beyond that. People aren't necessarily sort of buckling into a kind of like financial experience of holding that asset, which so much of the NFT space is at the moment. People are clearly looking for something not only that they believe in and want to support, but actually, there's a inescapably there's a financial component to that, which does kind of, I suppose, shape your experience in quite a significant way at the moment.
Yeah, I completely agree. If for any of the listeners like wanted to learn more about XG, like how can they get involved? Like what's the next like steps for XG? Like obviously you're in this stage now where you're getting investments, but what's the next stage for somebody that would actually want to be involved with the project?
Quite simply, drop us a line. But we're still small, but we're growing, and Twitter, Telegram. To be honest, we haven't got our Discord going yet because we're waiting for football to have the project sort of working before we really start to talk to people. But if people are out there and have got a team that they're interested in putting into a prototype league, just drop us a line. And I think we just appreciate kind of a bit like NFTFC, just appreciating what people are saying about things, and it's just interesting to hear. So just getting involved in the first instance would be fantastic.
Yeah, definitely, and we're going to be, probably like hiring soon as well. So if people, have got skills, whether they're developers or community managers, then love to hear from them and get involved. Just reach out. It'd be great to connect.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to put my team in the ring to be one of the testers. Just as long as I can get like a little MVP NFT every week.
You got to get the scores in first. You got to do it on the pitch first, Finley.
Yeah, the scores will be about 6-0 every week, and I'll be scoring all 6 just so I can rack up the NFTs. No, it's been a really good chat, guys. I think we'll try and keep it short. When I say short, it's been 43 minutes already, but I mean, it's always interesting talking to you guys, and I think you've really kind of got a grasp of the Web3 space and are really using it how it should be using. So I really love talking to you guys. Do you guys know the XG Studios Twitter off by heart if anybody listening wanted to go follow you?
I think it's XG Studios _ little cheeky underscore at the end.
Very crypto.
You should put a XYZ or ETH at the end of that. It's very crypto. We'll wrap it up there then. So go and follow XG Studios on Twitter and check out their website. I think they're doing really great things. I'm very excited to see what you guys do with the project, and I can't wait to keep talking to you guys.
Thanks for having us on. Yeah, great to talk to you.